Hello, all, and welcome to the Fantasy and Sci-Fi Fanatics podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Coolbaugh. Today, I have me a very special guest, Sienna Frost. Sienna, how are you doing today?
Well, I'm doing great, thank you.
I thought I was going to sneeze there. I was like, please don't do it. Please don't do it. And I was able to keep it in. So feeling like it's going to go well so far. Allergies here for me have just been crazy this week. So my wife's like, are you sure you're going to be able to talk? I was like, yeah, I feel okay. I'm used to it now. Um, but I was really glad that we could reschedule. People in the audience don't know. Some people know that I had a baby. So things have been crazy. I've had tech problems with all sorts of things. So I'm just so happy when, I can get somebody on, who we've had to reschedule, particularly, to keep the order in which we were trying to go. So I'm really excited because this will be our first episode of season 3, which is great because it comes right after my 2-year anniversary of starting the podcast. So yeah, so it'll be like you, and then it'll be our anniversary episode that we didn't get to do after season 1. So it'll be like a double basically. So yeah, it'd be really, really cool. But yeah, it's awesome to have you on today. And I've been seeing your books everywhere. So I'm really excited to, get in and dive in for them. So yeah. So we'll actually start right there with that first question. What has your writing journey been like up until this point?
I started writing when I was 12. I've always
Oh,
had
wow.
stories in my head, and I started writing them down just for my eyes only. And
Mm.
up until maybe 10, 15 years ago, nobody has ever read my stories. I've written
Oh, wow.
quite a lot and never
Yeah.
shared. And I started sharing my writing when I tried fan fiction. Actually, I didn't start
Oh,
sharing my
cool.
I started out writing originals, and then I found out about fan fiction, and I just wanted to have fun, and so I threw something out in the community, and it blew up.
That's awesome.
Blew up. I tried a chapter, people loved it. It became a trilogy of 300K,
Wow.
from fan fiction, of fan
Wow.
fiction, and in the end it was translated into 7 languages and shared everywhere
Wow.
around the world. So that's probably my biggest success though in terms of writing so far, and it was fan fiction.
That's crazy.
It was free, yeah. And but that got me to this point because a lot of fans wanted, me to be a writer. They said, we want to, why don't you go pro? Why don't you start doing your original? And so I started Obsidian, actually,
Oh, wow.
because the rest of the originals that I've been writing were just, for fun for me. I wasn't paying that much attention to quality because it was, it's just like a TV show that I like to watch. So I started really concentrating on Obsidian, and I still like sharing my work on the internet a lot. So I've been posting Obsidian on Wattpad, which is a web novel site where I shared one chapter at a time. And that was a pretty big success. I mean, not where the scale of what had success is, which is like a 20 million reads or something.
Oh, yeah,
But
yeah.
right now, yeah, it's about 60,000 reads on
Oh,
Wattpad,
wow.
and I finished that, and then people said, well, I wasn't even going to publish actually, and then people were going, you should query, and then so I did. I queried for a while. I got, you know, impatient. I didn't like begging a lot. I mean, coming from, I had a lot of readers before I come. I've never had to beg for people to
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
read my book to you, stuff like,
Yeah.
and it was the fans who was like, please update, please give me the next chapter, and me having to beg everybody to publish my book, to find an agent. That was a big thing for me. It stressed me out so much. I didn't like it at all. So I pulled it out, and I self-published. I met, I was talking to a lot of self-published authors on Twitter, and it really inspired me. And I thought this is where I should go. So yeah, I decided to self-pub. It's never been about being an author for me. I just wanted to share my book. It's been my fans pushing me to do this, and then they want like a whole book serialized and they want a paperback. And so I give them the paperback. They want an ebook of it. Then I give them the ebook, and then the illustrations, if you've seen them
Oh
around, because
yeah.
my paperback has a lot of illustrations.
Yeah, yeah.
I That was just because people wanted to have the paperback version, and I thought, I might as well do something special for them because they're gonna be paying quite a lot for this, and they've already read the whole book.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I
yeah.
was like, I don't want people to pay me that much and then have just the same book that they've already read
No,
for free.
totally. Yeah.
So I wanted that was a gift for them, actually, to thank them as well for supporting my journey. So yeah, that's been my journey up to this point. I still don't think that I really want to be an author, but I do want this book to be read because it's really important to me. It's become, I would say, the book I want to die with. I want something I want to leave behind this
Oh yeah, yeah.
series. Yeah, because
Oh, that's
it
cool.
contains everything I've learned, all my experiences traveling, being a mom, going through life as a human being, all the sufferings and how I got through it, all the wisdoms I've learned. I feel like I want to leave this book for somebody who might get something from it, especially my kids when I'm
Yeah, yeah.
gone. So it's a very important book for me. I'm here because of this book. It's not the other way around.
Mm.
Because if you know some authors, they most
Yeah, yeah.
authors have a career and they'll release a lot of books. I'm here just to write this series, pretty much. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Do you mind if I ask what kind of fan fiction you were writing? Or like what genre?
It's from a manga,
Oh, that's cool.
based on a manga, less known manga. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, that's cool. It's just interesting because you are one of several female authors I've had within the last, like, I'd say, like 6 months. So a couple, the other two are like at the tail end of our season two, who also were talking about like fan fiction. So they really got me into like looking into it, and I really want to do like Warhammer and like do the Black Vault. And I talked to Rob J. Hayes and Michael R. Fletcher and a couple others that had written for them. And oh my God, now I'm blanking on what her name is. Oh, so there's two of them I interviewed. It's I think it's Anna Stevens, but she just did some like Marvel stuff, where she has like Sid, and one of like the other. They have like her and like Richard Lee Myers. They have like some of the Marvel comic characters that they can write, but not the movie ones, for Aconite books. But yeah, she was telling me about, like she like also worked for like the Black Vault, and she's got a couple new stories out and stuff. And I was like, I just love Warhammer. So I was like, I think it'd be really cool. And then I realized Rob was like, "Oh, you really have to know your stuff." So I've been actually researching and reading a lot of it. So one day, hopefully, I can do that. But yeah, that's super cool that's how you got into it. That's really neat.
I've been recommending people, especially new writers, to go into fan fiction and go into it seriously because I feel like that is the biggest um, strength you can have with fan. And people usually find it unoriginal, but fan fiction is the best training ground for characterization, and that is one of my strongest um, skills, and that comes from writing fan fiction because what it does is, and you might feel that too, if you find out which authors have done fan fiction a lot, you realize that characterization is at a different level. That's like
Yeah,
that
yeah,
would be their strong points. They can create really compelling characters, and they stay in characters, and their characters feel really real. And the reason why that I figured out is because when we write fan fiction, you have to study the characters really well. Because when you post
oh yeah,
fan fiction, people already know these characters. They love these characters as is. You can't
yeah,
just
yeah,
go in and do anything with them. Everything they say, everything they do have to be in character. And once you do that to every character you write for fan fiction, it becomes a habit. So when we create our, like before I started writing fan fiction, it was doing originals. I don't think I was this good at it, at characterization, because I was just creating somebody out of thin air, and I wasn't paying too much attention with like whether, oh, this person would use this kind of word, would they say this kind of sentence,
Oh,
would they
interesting.
do this? And I didn't have to be careful, you see. But when you write fan fiction, the fans will throw stuff at you if you
Yeah,
go
yeah, yeah.
wrong. They would go like, and especially when you post in those communities, you get inline comments per paragraph. I used to post mine on LiveJournal, and LiveJournal lets you
Oh, wow.
comment a
Yeah,
lot
yeah.
on every chapter. So I would get, if I get them wrong, fans would just be saying, yo, he's not gonna, this guy is never gonna say this, not in this way, he's never gonna do this. And so it forces you to really focus on each character that you're writing to make sure that this is their decision, this is their words, and then they become really unique. So once you've gone through enough training of that, it becomes quite natural when you start writing your own original.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I write down notes too, so I'm writing that down. That's gonna have to be I'm trying to do seminars. I was trying to do them this summer and I had to bump them back. So I'm hoping this fall and winter to do some seminars with different people. So we'll have you back with some of the ladies that did fan fiction and talk about that. I think that would be a really cool episode to talk about like characterization and things you learn from fan fiction. So now you got me thinking a lot, which is why I do this podcast. So that's really cool. Um, I've been thinking that for a while now. Um, I think it's a really good point though that you make, right? Because like, you know, I think I always think of like Wolverine, like Hugh Jackman. Everybody's always like he's too tall, but other than that, he's amazing, right? But Wolverine's supposed to be like 5'6", he's like 5'5", so everybody always comments on that, and I think a lot of people begrudgingly are like, okay, Hugh Jackman, it's fine, but yeah, I always think about that, like particularly like that's what everybody always says, other than that, he's perfect, but it's really interesting to me, but it's like superheroes. I feel like in particular, right? People like Peter Parker's got the web shooters, or some people want it, to be like a mutant ability and come out of his, wrist or something like that. So I feel like if you start to, or, if you try to change Uncle Ben's story, they will absolutely, you might as well
Yeah.
not even write the story. So I think that's totally true. That's a really good point that I hadn't considered. One of the Star Wars, one of my favorite authors did a Star Wars story. I thought it was brilliant. I loved it. I love Star Wars. Been reading it for a long time. And people were like, "Oh, they didn't like how he wrote Luke," and I'm like, I thought it was brilliant. So I don't know exactly, fan wise, like what they were thinking, but it does. It a lot of people, dive bombed his, reviews and stuff because of that. I thought it was a brilliant story. I thought it added a lot to the character. I think they wanted your typical, whatever, but he added a new facet. Yeah, and a lot of people like didn't like it. I thought it was brilliant. So I think you make a really good point there about, characterization, because it is a really, especially when you have such a huge, genre or whatever you say, in terms of, it's a huge subject matter like Star Wars, I feel like it's really hard, to do that. And get it right sometimes. I feel like there's almost so many things you have to know. That's why Warhammer, I'm like, I gotta like my wife, she's like, you're like studying this thing like it's a subject in school or something, like it's your
It
second master's, like, but
teaches you to pay attention. So when you
yeah, yeah,
create your own big world, you come up with those details because you've studied it. You
yeah, yeah.
think of those things. So that's also what allows me to create a more complicated world as well, I think.
That's a
Because
good point. Sorry, I'm gonna write that
if
down.
you go through a show as a viewer, you might, if you're not one of those nerds,
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
would probably miss a lot of details. When I was writing fan fiction, I had to remember that, oh, this character likes to wear his shirt this way,
Mm,
and he likes this color. He likes to tie his hair like this, and before he says this, he does this with his eyebrows. So it's very detailed. And
yeah,
when you discuss with the fans, they come up, they see a lot of things, and you learn a lot of things. You learn to pay so much attention to detail that you can. When it becomes a habit, it's really good when you write your own originals, because you pay attention to your own detail and you don't get them wrong, and you
yeah,
learn to use those details in your book as well. Because when you write fan fiction, you have to make something out of what's already written, and you have to expand that. sometimes the way I do fan fiction is sometimes I write the scenes that the writers didn't show
Oh,
that we
that's a
want
good
to
idea.
see,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
the scenes that they cut, and then you would have to imagine that according to a set of characters and situations that already been set, and
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
causes not only your ability to connect things plot wise, but also and stay in characterization, and that I think that's also helps me fix a lot of plot holes, because I always find a way out. I always have to find an explanation why this character does this, and then I have to explain it in a chapter. And when you write your own original and you run into a brick wall writing fan fiction, that's a skill that gets you moving from point A to point B, because you've done
Yeah,
this so many times.
yeah,
In fan fiction, I have to extend the book, because the book ends and everybody's like, we want some more, right? I don't want it to end here. And so that's our work. That's fan fiction writers' work, to extend um, the manga, the story, and then the fans, because they don't want to leave these characters yet. And yeah, so that's how you can write a long story of your own as well. I can do this forever to my own
yeah.
story.
Oh, that's cool. Wrote a couple other good things on there too. I never thought about, yeah, like world building complexities was something I wrote down, and then yeah, I didn't think about that. Writing scenes that are cut from the main product. Yeah, that's a really good idea.
Because when you
Yeah,
love those characters, you want to see those scenes.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, that's why they always do the novelization of the movies, right? Because they're able to, fill in those different. That's my friend a while back. She was like, um, so she's like, yeah, like it's basically just like a fan fiction of the movie, and then of like the script. And I was like, oh, that's a really good point. So yeah, I hadn't considered that, but yeah, that's a really good point. Wow. All right. Well, I have a lot to think about with fan fiction today. Might have to write out that episode today and start sending out the invites on that one. I was like trying to find something that was a little bit different, like in terms of doing like our first summer, because I want to have like multiple authors come on, and to be a little bit longer, so it'd be like two like bonus episodes, things like that. But I haven't seen a lot of people. I've seen people do that with interviews and stuff, but not necessarily in the order that we're gonna do. So I think it can be really interesting. So that's definitely have to be one of them. So be on the lookout for that invite. So I think you and the other two ladies will have a really good time talking about your fan fiction. You guys have a little bit of different genres too, in terms of what you guys wrote. So I think that'd be really interesting. So for our audience, what genre or genres do you currently write in, and why?
I I'm currently writing only Obsidian, so that would be fantasy. It's more like historical fantasy with a made up
Oh,
world, because
cool.
I have no magic whatsoever. It's just a made up world, and it reads more like historical fiction. But before that, I have been writing romance, uh, vampire,
Oh,
erotica,
wow.
sorts of things. I think just horror and sci-fi are the two genres that I can't get into, because I'm too afraid of horror movies and everything. I can't. I'm an overthinker. I actually had to write a short story. It was a short story challenge uh, that I had to write her. I started one paragraph. I had so many nightmares that night. I said, no, I can't do her. And I'm not fond of technology, so I don't get into sci-fi and like really old historical stuff, men in capes and women in really, and dresses with a lot of fabrics, just that's my calling. So I can do most genres as long as it's old. The
That's
setting
awesome.
is old, or vampires.
Yeah.
But the fan
Oh, that's
fiction was
awesome.
mafia, was
Oh,
actually
that's cool. Oh, that's really
was all
cool.
mafia war and stuff. So yeah,
Oh, that's cool. Oh, that's super
those
cool.
are what I've been writing.
Oh, that's awesome. I totally get you with the horror. I like elements of horror in the fantasy that I write. That's like what a lot of the Forgotten Realms authors like Richard Lee Byers, I've seen them do in the past, and that's I like the elements, but I'm not just a straight horror person. Like I can't get myself into those books. I love Stephen King, don't get me wrong. The Stand, those different things, but yeah, it's not my thing. So I definitely
Yeah,
get that.
I
Yeah.
have to go to imagination, especially with her. I would have nightmares that connects several nights. I have series of the same nightmares that explains itself and kind of comes with the entire um, you know, three stages plot line and the backstory of everybody, every
There's
detail.
your horror book right there. Yeah, there's your horror
I
book.
know
An
I should
author
be
writing
really
it.
good
Yeah.
at it, but I don't want those nightmares. I would go to like I've had horrible nightmares since I was really young. Nightmares like I was hiding in a cupboard and some serial killer came in to kill
Oh
everybody
wow.
in the house, and I was like 8. Come on.
Oh wow. Sounds like my brother. My brother gets really bad ones.
Yeah,
now
but
he's just
it's really
now he's just used to
detailed.
them.
My
Yeah.
dreams are really detailed. Like it's novel like detail. So I'm okay with dreaming other genres, but dreaming horror with that
Yeah, yeah,
much
yeah.
detail, no.
It's funny that you mentioned that because I just talked about that with a writing friend of mine, and because like I feel like almost like the better you get at writing, the more complicated your dreams are,
Oh
and
yeah,
and it's like it's almost like a full movie play. Sometimes I'm like, oh my god, I was like, why? I'm like, really? I'm like, why can't I do that while I'm like, that was a really good movie. I'm like, why can't I
exactly,
write that well when when I'm
exactly.
awake? Maybe one of these days, but I don't know. That to me, that sounds like a really cool. Maybe I'll have to do that. I'll have to take that from. Have to have you be the author in the horror story, and then you get nightmares from it or something. You have to figure out how to stop it or something. That'd be really cool. So my favorite question is always asking people what their books are about because I love books. So what is your book Obsidian Awakening about, and how did you come up with this idea?
Uh, it's about so many things, but if we're talking plot wise, this is a book about war and hate and prejudice and fate. Actually, it's a clash of humanity of sorts, where you would see both sides of the war. The heroes are on both sides, so there are no villains in here.
Oh, cool.
Not exactly. You would care about both. You would see the incentive of both. You would be sad either way if one of them loses the war. But it's a story about sacrifice at the times of war as well, and how far we're willing to go for those ideals, and what we're willing to sacrifice for it. So most of the characters will be broken. They would have to give up something really dear to their hearts for something greater or something they believe in. And the result is that it's chaos because everybody wants something um, different.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's just the whole story is not, it's very far from good and evil because it's just the clash of what we need and everybody how everyone loses in war. So it is, I call it a shit show of humanity.
which is
um,
history, right? Yeah.
yeah, which is history. That's why I said it reads more, because everything that happens has happened in history. I don't save characters because there are your MCs. Um, and you would just have to go through with a lot of tragedies with no heroes to help. And yeah, it's that kind of heartbreaking stories, but it also deals with a lot of problems today that I see, including racism, discrimination, and vengeance as a whole, and what it does to the society. You will see a lot of characters that um, hang on to hate, and that is exactly what ruins everything.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, I want to stress that point as well, because it's we all say we want peace, but nobody wants to put peace above all else.
Yeah. No, it's true. Yeah.
above everything. So when it comes down to each person, we hang on to hate, we hang on to vengeance, and then we say we want peace. That's not gonna happen. And that the book illustrates that problem. I wanted it to be a wake up call of sorts. For I'm hoping that people would read it and maybe look at your enemies in another light. Um, make room for that they're just trying to get by as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
And but yeah, but the idea for the book is actually I was in Mongolia for 21 days on a
Oh,
horseback trip where I was staying with the Mongolian nomads for the entire time.
oh, jealous.
And yeah,
I'm a history
and that,
teacher. I just got done teaching about Genghis Khan and Mongolians and Mongolia like
oh,
last
that
Thursday. Yeah.
I'm a traveler. I travel a lot, and my trip to Mongolia changed my life. I came back. I sat down. I said I have to share this experience with everybody. So the book is about a nomadic race, but off the desert because I also stayed a lot with Bedouins in
Oh,
Jordan and Egypt.
cool.
Yeah,
Oh,
and I really love the way they think, the way they live, because when you spend time with nomads, you really see what freedom is like. You taste real freedom and the cost of freedom as well. So being you see people who are really proud with weight, but they have nothing, they nothing more
yeah,
than
yeah,
what
yeah.
they can carry on their cart. They live in a very basic life, but they are really proud because they never have to ask anybody for anything. They would never have to beg anybody for anything. And they're happy. They can be happy with that situation of hard work all the time. Risk is something that you see so much because they're out there alone, this small family of 4 5 sometimes in the middle of the steppes. I was
Wow.
with a family whose kid, he was, I think his kid was like maybe 6 or 7, and he got really sick one night, and he was like, well, the closest doctor is 8 hour horse ride away.
Wow.
And but luckily I had some antibiotics, and we were staying and I gave it to the kid and he survived and everything. But that made me realize that, wow, this is that's the cost of freedom. And they're willing, that the thing is they're willing to accept that cost for that freedom, for to have that pride in exchange. It impressed me so much the whole time because they're so brave. They're not afraid of death. They probably are, but it's like, this is our lives, where this is what we choose, and we're gonna face chaos, we're gonna face danger, and they go through life every day, just not planning that much. And I would go with them, and they would go, yeah, they'd say, oh, I'm not sure if we can cross this river today because the water might be really high. And I'm like, so what do we do when we can't cross the water, the river?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? We're in the middle of the
Yeah.
steps. And they were just like, I don't know, we'll figure it out. We'll just make camp, I don't know, find a horse, stay until the water goes down.
Wow.
it's but they're like, they told me that if you wait for everything to be safe, you would never get to live.
Yeah.
And it really inspired me, and a part of why I wrote Obsidian this way is also it's that the war is between an empire which is close to our civilization, like, it's protected, everything is well organized, or you're behind walls, and then they're at war with this nomadic race who are really proud, and they prefer and to go to war, in like Genghis Khan's time, where the tribes would fight each other, and one of my characters could say, well, we prefer the freedom to fight rather than being caged behind walls. So that
Yeah.
was her point of view. They chose that life, and then the ones the king, the emperor would say that, that's kind of dumb, because for him, people would want to be safe. They want to, prosper. They want their children to go out safe. But the price is that you have to live behind walls. So that's the price of safety and freedom that we all have to make that choice for. And I from both I've seen both sides of it. I've seen the good things on both sides of it, and it really inspired me. So yeah, this book was, I started writing this book after I returned from Mongolia.
Oh, wow. Well, that's super cool. It's a put you down in my notes later, ask you some Bedouin questions. I got a story that I pretty much have like very
And
similar
the
people.
Bedouins are the same. The Bedouins, I didn't spend that much time with them. That was before I went to Mongolia, but I was really impressed with nomads since then. Yeah, and that's why I decided I wanted to go and just do this trip.
It's really cool. Huh, I have a lot to think about there. That's just really neat. Yeah, I was just talking to some kids about that today. They were like trying to figure out kind of like that freedom thing you were just talking about. It was interesting because they asked me, they're like, well, why would this group of people rather, I think we were like talking about the Romans or whatever, and they're like, why would this group of people rather die than they're like they can just be part of the Roman Empire? And I was like, yeah, but then they have to get rid of all their freedom. They have to, basically farm or do whatever, I said, especially if that's not your culture, and you have to give all these things up, in order to be Roman, so you can keep your religion and stuff, be a citizen. But I was like, a lot of people, particularly at this time, I was like, that's just, I said, we're a much different mindset today, right? Being countries than I think that people did back then. I was like, you're a country because you're a citizen. Today you're born that way. I said, imagine if you weren't though, and you were free, and then somebody comes to take you over. I said, I think you'd have a much different, must have a much different viewpoint of, and you'd be able to understand that mindset versus, oh, you're already part of this gigantic empire, if you will, or country. So yeah, it was like really, we had to really break it down. It was like really hard for them, to like understand like why somebody would give their life for freedom rather than, and I was like, yeah, it's like any, current war or something, I was like, look at Ukrainians, things like that. So it was very interesting that they were just having such a hard time with that. But yeah, I
It
think that's
takes
what's
being
cool about it.
Yeah, it takes being exposed to a lot of cultures. Like I said, I travel a lot. I've lived in 4 continents since I was 15.
Oh wow.
I grew up here in Bangkok. I was born here. I am Thai. And then I left Thailand for New Zealand at 15,
Oh,
14, 15. And then I moved to the UK. And then I moved to the US. And then I came back here. So I've seen the goods and bad of different cultures, the strengths and weaknesses. And I've had to adapt to a lot of cultures because I didn't just travel. I was living there for a few
yeah,
years.
yeah, yeah.
Um, it really helps you to understand things from different perspectives. Like in my book as well, you'd see a lot of clashes. It's not one way at all. It's different directions. I have, like I said, 2 sides of the war, being empire and nomads, and then I have the half-bloods who are
Mm.
stuck in between.
Oh,
um,
nice.
and then they too would have to figure out where they belong, which side they have to fight for, and which culture works for them. And they are judged by both sides of the race of these races because they're half. And I have a girl who would go through arranged marriage proudly, who would go for it because that would mean she gains her an army to
Mm.
fight for her land. And that's something that's unusual in Western literature, I think, because you guys put a lot of importance on the freedom of individuals.
Yeah, yeah.
Here in Asia, it's more for the community. I grew up with people who have to go back to marry, or sometimes even going into prostitution willingly to support their families back home. So I've seen that side too, and I also wanted to share that side too. That it's not always a bad thing like everybody thinks. There are people who are willing to sacrifice their own freedom for something greater, for someone else, for people they love, for just the families they want to protect. And it's not necessarily a horrible thing that everyone thinks it is. And sometimes they end up loving their husbands, and they become they can become a good family that don't get divorced even. So these things, it's just a big clash of culture that I'm offering in this book from my experience. I've been through to every continent except Antarctica. I've been to about 46 countries
Oh
as
wow.
of um, and I like travel for culture. I like to travel for culture. So yeah, so that went into this book.
Oh, that's really
Yeah,
cool.
it's really interesting to write, and I feel like it's one of the books that you would need to have those experience to see and understand those point of views.
Yeah, yeah. So would you say that just like, traveling in general, has helped your ability to world build, where you're able to be like, oh, I'm gonna have this, you know.
Everything was taken from my travel experience.
Oh, that's
In the
cool.
way people drink tea, the way this culture does this festival, the festival that I have in there is based on Nadam, which is a contest for warriors that they have in Mongolia every year, where the warriors would get together, they would do archery, they would ride horse, they would wrestle, and then the winners would go to the capital to it's sort of like the
Oh, that's
Olympics.
cool.
It's amazing, yeah, and they all
Awesome.
wear their traditional clothes. The small villages come together, and the small tribes come together, and then they compete. I We saw that because it was during the summer. Yeah, that went into the book. Sometimes when
Awesome.
I go to a country where they have this big hierarchy about where what women's role in the community or in the family and stuff, and it's just different for every places. And because I'm a traveler, when you go to someone's country, you respect the way they do things,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
learn to appreciate it. And I feel like I really want to bring out those things that people might have gotten them wrong. That you would see this culture doing this, and you would see that's evil. But if you actually go there and experience it, it's not as evil as you think. And yeah, so it does help me a lot, and it also helps me grow in compassion as well. Because every time I feel like uh, I don't judge people as quickly
Hmm.
as before,
Yeah, yeah,
because I've been wrong about things too many times because I travel. Yeah, so it does help, and I feel like I hope that the more people read this book, the more compassion they can have, and the less judgmental they would be of other cultures. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
that's
I always tell my kids, I'm like, you fear what you don't know, I said, and if you don't
yeah,
know somebody that, has done X, Y, and Z or lived a certain way, I'm like, we talk about world religions a lot. I'm like, religion's really, vital to a lot of people. I'm like, if you've never, I said, I encourage you to, I said, I'm not trying to convert you or anything from one thing to another. I said, or whatever, have you believe something, but I was like, it isn't. I think it's important that if this thing is so important to people, it might be kind of good to check it out. I said, if you're trying to become friends with somebody who's a writer or an athlete, or whatever, I said, you're gonna look into that common interest. I said, so if religion's really, vital to people, I said, it would make sense that you would try to learn about that religion, and you might learn, a certain aspect of what they think or believe. I said that might help you, determine, why they think a certain way, and, I think it makes a lot of sense when you talk about, different culture too, and um it's like my friends from South Korea, and we're always talking about, differences, in politics or government or, civic, something like that. He's like, well, you guys really think this and this. And I'm like,
yeah,
yeah. And I was like, we're always trying to get to the why, to just really to help, with writing, I would say, and Because like I don't want to take I would say an American aspect, into I like a lot of historical. I like to write historical urban fantasy. So I'm really trying to get certain cultures right or certain points of view. I don't want to take a certain point of view. And I always tell the kids, historically, I'm like we're really trying to develop our historical thinking skills. Like why did people do this or why, I
Yeah.
said it even goes today, right? Geographical thinking skills or sociological. So we talk a lot about that, but my friend one day was like, "You're just trying to set these kids up to be authors, and trying to get them in it."
No,
I
I
said, "Well,
think
that's
that's
history, is different
yeah.
viewpoints." I said, "That's
It's I
books
think
just in
that's
general."
the
So,
most crucial thing about being a good writer is you have
yep,
to be interested.
yeah, yeah,
If you don't you have to try not to judge, but be interested in why
yeah,
people
yeah. Like,
do
why
this.
does yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
and I have this one motto for me is because I every anything that makes another person happy, I have to try it at least once.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
That opens up a chance of me enjoying that too.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
then I add one more way I can be happy to my life. So
Oh, that's a
I
good
when
idea.
I travel, I collect those things, everything I've never done, or even the things that I feel like that's not a good, I'm not gonna like it. But if somebody enjoys it, I'm gonna try it once and
Yeah,
see. And it's been great. I mean, you keep adding ways of making yourself happy if you do that.
yeah. Oh, that's a great idea. I have to think about that for the future. I never considered that, but that's a good one. So we got a little bit of time left, so I really just want to get to we talked about a couple of the other questions throughout. But I just wanted to ask you because I always think this is a vital one to understand different authors. Which one of your characters would you like to meet and why?
Oh, it's probably the king. It's Muradi. He is a villain of sorts, but he's not. Eventually, once you get to know him, you a lot of people say that he's actually the leader we all need, and he's been built up as a tyrant. He's been built up as a dictator, but once you see the way he really thinks, it makes a lot of sense.
Hmm.
And he's had this backstory that's very complicated. He's had to kill his mother when he was like 10. Um, and from that, he had to kill two sons and their mothers as well. And he had his own reasons, which I explained, but the he's almost a madman in a way, but brilliantly mad. And yeah, so I would really like to meet and discuss a lot of things with him. He's brilliant, and he is actually the character that my readers ask for the most because they said
Oh wow.
we have to have uh, his backstory written in detail because I start this book when he's already king. And so I actually promised my readers that I would go and when I'm done, I'm gonna do his prequel,
Oh, that's
which
cool.
which is going to be his standalone book, the just the journey of him from a young age until he becomes king. So yeah,
Oh, that's super cool.
I need the material.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, that's really cool. That's interesting that they helped you with, kind of decide that that character needs a prequel. So that's really cool. Um, that's really neat. That's
But
a great
he's a lot
answer.
of people's favorite. Yeah, he's not.
Yeah,
Everybody calls him the quote unquote bad guy. I
yeah. That's awesome.
always
That's
find that kind of bad guys to be
yeah.
really
Loves
interesting.
Darth Vader, right? Yeah. My friend said he goes, I'm kind of worried because he had the similar thing pop up. He goes, everybody wants this villain prequel. He's like, I'm kind of worried that I write villains better than I do, heroes. It's like everybody always likes my villains. I'm like, well, that just means that, they're connecting in some way and you're making them very interesting. He's like, yeah, but I want them to like my main character. So he actually changed some things about both of them. So then people were kind of demanding both. But I was like, it's always interesting. I think if you could write a really good villain or bad guy or something and people find them interesting. I think that's the mark of a great writer personally. But that's super cool. So we're just winding down with time here. I just want to make sure to get this one in for that last one. So do you have any news, updates, promos, or current projects you're working on? I mean, you said this guy has a prequel, so that to me is really interesting. I would love to see that in the future, especially if these guys, your readers help pick out this particular character. To me, that says I need to read that. So to me, that's really cool. But I was just curious at what else you had going on for our audience. That way, they just know what to look forward to in the future.
I'm writing book two. I'm
Oh,
about to finish book
oh,
two.
awesome.
It's very close, but not yet. So I'm thinking if nothing gets in my way, it should be released sometime this year. I'm trying to get it released within this year,
Oh,
and
wow.
then that will definitely be book three. I am not a planner, so it's gonna be as long as it needs to be. As of now, I just know there's gonna be big book three. I don't know if there's gonna be four, five, six, or 10.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's funny.
Because I have a huge cast and I tend to go on until they die.
That's fair.
It's not, and I love these characters. I don't want to leave them until they
Yeah, yeah,
die.
that's
But
fair.
yeah, that's the book three is definitely coming. I'm going to take, but once the series is done, that's going to be the prequel of Murari, which is everybody is saying, can you stop writing the main series and do prequel first?
That's a great sign, though, I feel like.
His fans are saying, I'm like, I'm dying for this. You're like, you can stop
Yeah,
for a minute and then do this first. Like, I can't jump like that.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It's hard.
I'm going to take a break after book two before I write book three to do the hardcover of book one.
Oh, cool.
I could have done that a long time ago, but again, I feel like hardcover is something really expensive, and I don't want to just copy the paperback and make
Yeah,
people buy
yeah.
hardcover. So I want to redo all the illustrations. I want to make it
Oh,
even
that's cool.
better. May upgrade the cover a little bit, just make it a really nice product. So that's also what I want to release in the near future when I'm done with book two. Um, and also, I have plans of releasing I call it the director's cut of
Oh,
the
that's
book.
cool.
A lot of people ask for that as well, because when I was clearing, I cut a lot from the book to
Mm.
try to hit the word count, and then I also have
Oh, yeah.
deleted scenes. Like I said, I write fan fictions, and I write fan fictions of my own fiction sometimes. And fans of these characters really like reading those extra chapters. So
Yeah.
uh, I might throw that into the director's cut, um, and make it a volume for people. I'm working on a website which would be kind of interactive, more with readers. I will have a vault where subscribers can access other things I write for free.
Oh, neat.
I have, yeah, and they can have the updates of little things, the fan fictions that I write. I want my readers to be able to discuss characters and everything on the website as well. I really enjoy doing that at LiveJournal when we have a community and just talk about characters. So I want to make a website that integrates that. It's gonna be a pretty big website, which is gonna take me some time, but I'm gonna try to do that after I finish book two as well, before I begin book three. So yeah, and then maybe I would have spin-offs
Oh,
of
cool.
some of the characters that has been requested other than Murari, just two or three more characters that have a big story of their own that
Oh, neat.
my that the readers really want to read and I really want to write as well. So I could end up writing this forever.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's super cool. Well, that's awesome. Well, it sounds like I just again, I think it's cool when your readers are, like, telling you, like, what they want, so that's really neat if they're requesting, like, other characters. I think that's definitely, telling you that you're,
Talk to
right
them
where you're
a
supposed
lot.
to be, so
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
That's
that's
a
awesome.
good thing about posting on Wattpad because the readers talk to you every chapter, sometimes in at paragraph level. So they would, I love the experience because they would read a paragraph, they would scream and shout, they would post emojis of when they cry. I love this guy. I like her so much. Can you do this? Can you do that? And I'm sort of collecting all the requests and seeing it makes me want to write, fanfics on my own fiction.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
That's
then
awesome.
when I do, they really appreciate it. Some of those chapters, I get more reads than the main chapters in the book, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's crazy. Well, that's awesome. Well, I got a lot of notes myself, so I'm gonna have to go back over this episode and kind of write them out. But that was awesome. I'm gonna think a lot about fan fiction today. But thank you so much for coming on. And like I said, you're our first episode of season 3, so I really hope that people got out as from this as much as I did. I got a lot of really cool things to think about today for my writing session. But good luck on everything with book 2 and the prequel, that sounds amazing. If there's anything we can do, in the meantime before this drops, Labor Day weekend or after, just, let me know on Twitter, email me, and we'll share whatever we need to share and get it out there for you. So if there's anything I can do at all, just let me know. But other than that, I hope you have a great rest of the evening. And I'm so glad that we could reschedule and talk about your book and this great community that you built. So definitely be checking out your future website. So well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Sienna.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime, anytime.
very
Perfect.
interesting conversation and yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I got a lot to think about. I'm definitely gonna be sending you an email about a couple of different things. So, well, I hope you have a good rest of the day, and I will talk to you on social media, my friend.
Yes, you too.
Bye.